Well, the big green ranger has been finally spoiled, and he's no joke. Pings on defense and free reloads, even better actually since he can fill a second slot with New Horizons, and the legendary chest piece seems built for him. I have very little doubt that we're going to see a lot of this ugly boy over the next few months. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks, and welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast where apparently we only need to defend 40 times to win, baby. So yes, Riptide. First, a huge shout out to our People's Champion, DM Ramada, for an absolutely phenomenal spoiler video. It was very, very well done. Now, of course, we'd expect nothing less, but still, very well done, my man. Furthermore, as we go through this today, let me know in the comments below, are you excited for Riptide? Are you afraid of him? Let me know. So this ugly boy looks pretty scary, at least on paper. Also, what's scary is that if lots of people go into Riptide, then don't wizards perhaps become more popular? I think so. Hooray. Hooray! Now, obviously, my joke about defending 40 times isn't accurate. He still has to trigger his traps, which won't be as easy as I think people think it will. That said, I'm more excited about his effective reload ability. Being able to load in a 1/6 Death Touch with Bloodpox on hit just for doing what he wanted to do anyway is pretty good. But oh ho ho, there's more. And that's where I want to start first today is that top ability there on Riptide. Whenever you play a card from hand, you may put a card from hand face down into your arsenal. And I think that cleared up a lot of questions we had early when we saw Barbed Castaway. Remember, Barbed Castaway is once per turn instant. For one, put an arrow card from your hand face up into your arsenal. And once per turn instant, for one, you may turn a face down arrow into your arsenal face up. If you do, put an aim counter on it. A lot of us are like, well, how does that work? Well, now we know how that very, very, very consistently works. Riptide's vanilla playline then pretty much writes itself. D-react on their turn, playing it, of course, being a D-react. Remember, you can't defend with a card that's not playing it. You'd have to play something like a D-react to load in a card face down. Then you go into your turn. If it's a 0/4 arrow, you fire it off for free, rinse, wash, repeat. That's the pretty straightforward playline. That said, I'm a little more intrigued about the fact that the bow can still then load on its turn. So if we go back to the old days and we look at something like Sikkim Shot. Sikkim Shot has never been a very good arrow, primarily because of the reason of most of the bows, with the exception of Voltaire. If you pay 1 to load, it goes face up, you fire it off, but then you've used it because it's once per turn. But the fact that Riptide can load in something like a Sikkim Shot or a Falcon Wing, which has the natural go again, means that you can still then use that bow again. And I also have Boltyn Shot up here because that's right, we're going to have a little bit of discussion about maybe using a different bow for him in a little bit. And while the obvious move with Riptide is loading an arrow off of a D-react, let's not forget that it is any card you play from hand. As such, front pump cards like Nimblism, or as shown here, Seek and Destroy, also let you do the same. The play line here being Seek and Destroy, or any front pump, you load a Sikkim Shot into Arsenal, then you can still load another arrow with Barbed Castaway and fire again, enabling a 2-arrow turn. We could even go one step farther then. Let's say we front pump with something like a Deadeye, load any arrow. In this case, we're using a Mobilizing Shot because it's really good. And then we can use Barbed Castaway to flip it face up, giving it the aim counter, and then fire it off with aim. That said, I'd like to have a quick discussion about actually moving away from Barbed Castaway and revisiting Everfest with Dreadbore. While Dreadbore's ability is not an instant, it does have the static ability that arrows you control have defense reactions can't be played from hand, this chain link. And remember that +1 is very valuable for cards like Boltyn Shot. So while I know a lot of the excitement is around Riptide's defense reaction ability with his traps, I actually think it's that first one that's going to open up a lot of very interesting playlines. Now, I was holding off judgment on this until we actually got information on what triggering actually meant. Was it simply playing a card, or did you have to actually fulfill the success criteria? I think most of us expected it to be the success criteria, give or take. But yes, that finally came out today, and it does confirm that a trigger is basically fulfilling the win portion. So if we look at cards like Pendulum Trap, Collapsing Trap, and Boulder Trap, what we see is a win condition. When this defends and the opponent has done something, do this. That is defined as triggering the trap. So in the case of Pendulum Trap, when it defends, if the attacking hero had played a reaction, put the top 2 of their deck into Arsenal. That would then also trigger the pinging 1 damage. Likewise with Collapsing Trap, if it's used against a Go Again, or Boulder Trap, if it defends something that has been essentially pumped. Now let's revisit the 3 original traps from Crucible of War: Tripwire Trap, Pitfall Trap, and Rockslide Trap. For these 3 cards, the trigger occurs when they defend. The win statement is not dependent on if the opponent pays off the resource to make the condition not happen. And that makes the 3 OG traps very effective with Riptide's ability. Tripwire Trap and Pitfall Trap are looking especially enticing. And remember, even though they have to be played from Arsenal, you could play a D-React and then load Tripwire and or Pitfall to make that happen. It remains to be seen, of course, how effective overblocking will be in effectively trading 1 card for 1 damage in those cases, if you're overblocking again. But we'll see in the future how that all translates. Last, but certainly not least, is the legendary piece of equipment, Trench of Sunken Treasure. Once per turn instant, once per turn, so you can do it on your opponent's turn, put a face-down card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck and gain 1 resource. At the very least, this card prevents you from jamming up your own arsenal. Even with New Horizon, it's still relevant, because remember, you only get that second slot with a face-up card. So this is an interesting little piece, right? Because fundamentally, any card you put into Arsenal for the explicit plan of making resources could have just been pitched. So why is this good? Well, for the same reason that Crown of Seeds is good, well, one of the reasons that Crown of Seeds is good, which is hiding your pitch stack. So this is by no means essential in order to play him. It's not going to be a gatekeeping piece by any means, but I think this is really good. So to close out today's video, I kind of wanted to give my take on him and kind of my discussion on where you think he's going to fall. Now, I know that there's a lot of people very, very excited about this guy, very, very scared about this guy, and so on. And you know what? It's becoming apparent to me that perhaps I am a bad Fab player. I think Azuri's really good, and people don't seem to think so. A lot of people think he's going to be really, really good. And I don't know that he's going to be super competitive. I'm not saying he's going to be fun to play against, but I'm not convinced that he's going to make waves on the competitive scene, and primarily for the reason that he's still a ranger. And what I mean by that is he can jam up. It costs him a card to do everything, and he can still brick, right? So from a deck construction standpoint, the ratios on the defense reactions and the arrows is going to be very, very, very important to ensure that he's not drawing all D-reacts and then can't do anything, or on the converse, draws all attacks. Now you can sure defend there, but then all of a sudden you start depleting your arrows faster. Right, and that's why I think he's going to be very, very susceptible to a very popular playstyle right now. He's going to be very susceptible to fatigue. Right? Remember, everything he does is going to cost him cards. So if you sit down versus Riptide, there's a couple things I think you need to remember. 1, try to prioritize your weapon swings against him. Block out his attacks so you're not taking damage, right? Because you're going to be taking damage, maybe, but again, you can minimize that. You're going to be taking damage on your turn, paying at a time. So don't take damage from him, right? Block it and then just come weapon. Block it and come weapon. It's not going to be a fun way to play, but I think that's why ultimately I don't think he's going to make much wave, maybe pun intended, not really intended, but I don't think he's going to be making a bunch of waves in the competitive scene for that reason. Someone like Bravo or Oldhim, I think eats this guy alive, right? So if you go and you look at all the traps, there's not really weapon concern, right? And there are several traps that trigger off of, in fact, one of them's amazing, right? Like let's say you've had 9 cut to chases in your deck and you play an attack reaction and boom, you just hit 8 damage, right? Now, all you do, you just don't attack react versus the guy, right? It's pretty straightforward. And then, because you're going to come at it, he's going to say, no defense, no reactions. You'll pass reactions, they'll say no reactions. You're like, okay, right? The damage was done. Because if so much of his block is going to be in the defense reactions, what I'm trying to say here, right? Because he's not going to want to consume his arrows to defend or his pump cards to defend, he's going to be relying on his defense reactions to defend for the most part, right? So if you just don't react and he's got one of those, well, I'm waiting for you to play an attack react, and he's not going to be able to use it, or he's either going to have to defend and waste the ability, not trigger the trap, or he's not going to defend, he's going to try and save it, and you're going to deal the damage. So I think, again, you just keep pinging on the guy. You're not really pinging. You just keep slicing on the guy, mitigate as much damage as you can, and I think eventually he runs out of options or he has a bad turn, and you stick him good. But let me know if you disagree in the comments, right? That's just where I see it going. We need to get it on the table and see what happens and let the smart kids do their thing, and we'll see where he ends up. But let me know in the comments if you disagree. So anyway, that's my take overall on this guy. He's really cool. The load, you know, again, getting Sikkim Shot out there, like I think Sikkim Shot's a good card with this guy, which is really cool to see. A lot of exciting stuff, a lot of exciting play lines with him. I'm really excited to see what people do with him. So best of luck. Anyway, thanks for joining me today for the recap. If nothing else, folks, go Commando.